Hi there, and welcome to another edition of TokStocks. I'm your host, Keir Reynolds, and today we're lucky enough to have John Passalacqua, CEO for First Phosphate. It trades on the CSE with the ticker PHOS, PHOS. Hey, John, how you doing?
Great, Keir, yourself?
Hey, not too bad, man. Not too bad at all. It's been about a year since we last chatted. You were nice enough to give me a bit of time back in March of last year, and you've had a whole lot going on with the company. So, thought we were overdue to catch up with you and hear about some of the progress that you've made. Before we kind of dive in to ask you a few questions, sort of about the company and explain the developments, maybe for those of my viewers that don't know you, maybe you could explain a little bit about who you are, your background, what you've done to sort of prepare yourself for this role.
Oh yeah, so I'm the CEO of First Phosphate. I'm also the largest investor. I've been involved in capital markets for a number of decades in different capacities. This is really my first kick at the can on being on the other side of the street, being someone who's running a public company, and so yeah, we're giving it our best shot here.
Hey, excellent. Well, you're putting your money where your mouth is. That's for sure. It's nice to see somebody, participate and, fund the company as it's being developed. So good on you. Maybe we can sort of start off where we kind of finished off last time. Maybe you could explain some of the announcements and some of the key developments that you've sort of completed since March. One of those would be pilot production of LFP battery grade purified phosphoric acid, and the announcement of a 25,000 meter drill program. Could you elaborate on some of the other milestones as well as these?
So that's great to start with the pilot plant. What we've done is our basic premise is to be able to show to the world how you get from a rock in the ground out to a finished product in the battery industry. So what we've done is one pilot plant that we've established is one is called the phosphate concentrate pilot plant. That's where we take phosphate from the ground in Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, and we concentrate the phosphate. So we clean it all up so that it's ready to go into other products. So that's what we've been able to do. That's the first pilot plant. The second one was where we were able to take that phosphate concentrate that's now cleaned up, and it's a very high purity, about 41% pure phosphate, and now you have to turn it into what you could kind of say almost 100% pure phosphate into purified phosphoric acid, which is the precursor for LFP battery, together with lithium and a source of iron. So we've done that as well. We've done that as well with our partner out of Belgium, Prayon, and that was just completed a few weeks ago. So that's quite a great milestone. The next milestone, obviously, with that will be to take some of that material and to make actually LFP cathode active material out of it, so that we prove out the whole process from rock all the way to the end product of a battery cell. What's really exciting about this process that we're using to do this, there's a few processes, but we've decided to use processes which are known in the mining industry, conventional processes, so that we're not dealing with a lot of mining risk, right? Because you've got a lot of risk in mining. You don't want to take on technology risk. So to get the phosphate concentrate, we had a very easy sort of magnetic separation and solventless separation. And then from there, we're using a process that Prayon has developed for 70 years now. They've been using it to make purified phosphoric acid. So there's no technology risk in the solution, which is really incredible.
Hey, excellent. Could you maybe give us maybe we backtrack a little bit, maybe give us a full sort of like overview on First Phosphate in terms of why you set the company up, what its strategy is, and what it ultimately hopes to do, and in terms of like where it will participate in the value chain?
Yeah, so First Phosphate is a very unique company in the sense that, as far as we know, we're the only company worldwide, either private or public, that is 100% focused on phosphate, purifying phosphate, but specifically for one application. That's to make purified phosphoric acid an LFP cathode active material, meaning most of the other companies out there that are into phosphate, it's generally with some type of a fertilizer bias. Okay, some of them do make purified phosphoric acid, but generally they're making it, as a secondary product. Their first product is usually food phosphates or some type of fertilizer. But we are specifically for the LFP battery industry 100% because we do believe that a LFP battery is a technology client that's very different than a fertilizer client. So being 100% focused on that is what is going to help us to win the race and really establish an expertise in that field.
Excellent. And we've been hearing a lot more about LFP batteries. Are you able to kind of give just a bit of an explanation in terms of like what that is as compared to what sort of technology has been sort of around, prior to sort of LFP or in competition with LFP? Could you just talk a bit about that market and what the benefits of those products are?
Yeah, so LFP batteries have been around for a very long time. They've been being produced for almost 20 years now, mostly in China. The most well-known technology for batteries is nickel, manganese, and cobalt batteries. Generally, they were the first type of battery to sort of be used because they had a longer a life or a longer charge cycle. But LFP batteries now are also getting very, very good in that level. They're still a little bit behind the NMC batteries, but the LFP batteries have the advantage of being non-toxic. They have greater fire safety, and they have much lower cost. The other thing that they have is they don't really have battery memory, so you can charge them when there's still a lot of charge left, and you can recharge them without running into memory issues. And they have a lot of cycles that you can use them on. They've been known to last some of them up to 10 years like that. So it's always a trade-off, but because of where LFP battery is, especially in the cost structure, sometimes an LFP battery can be up to 50 to 66% cheaper than an NMC battery. And now in a car, for instance, the LFP battery might give you up to 300 kilometers of range, whereas, an NMC battery might get you to 400, 450. So, you're trading a little bit of range, but again, most people in a day do not do more than, 100 kilometers. So they're really a safe battery for the city, right? And they're a safe battery to really allow mass adoption. Why? Because costs come down, right? The big example that I give it to everybody here is, if you're taking an Uber anywhere inside of North America, if you have in any city, you've probably been picked up by a Tesla, right? A Model 3
Yeah.
or a Model Y, and you're like, well, something's strange here. Well, you got to look at that as a sign of mass adoption. Forget about all the textbooks, forget about all the research reports. If a guy can have an app called Uber and drive around all day in a Tesla, and pick up people, make enough money to make that a job that he or she is using to feed their family, you got a case for mass adoption, right? So that's because Tesla was able to put in these LFP batteries. Granted, they were all coming from China, they still are, and they were able to get the battery price lower and the price of the car lower to under 40,000 US, and that's huge, right? Now with the Inflation Reduction Act, they're actually
Yes.
mandated to get the credits that those cars all have to be under $55,000. So you're going to see a massive, massive swell towards LFP battery, in part or in full. There's still going to be luxury models out there that need the best of the best of the best. Hey, you want to pay over 100,000, 150,000 for an SUV? You want an NMC battery in there? Great. But the mass market of mass adoption, and that's where I think most people want to be in terms of consumer products, is going to be LFP. You're looking at LFP battery kind of like what the station wagon was in the 1950s and the 1960s, as mass industrial production started up in North America after the war, getting families, kids, dogs into cars. That made the most sense. And the LFP batteries is kind of the same way. Getting your kids to school, going shopping, going to work. You don't want to pay a lot of money for something something that's a utility really, and it's small and it gets you into the city. Nice thing about these things now are these vehicles, as you know, you get preferential parking now if you've got an electric vehicle, right?
Yeah.
So there's quite an incentive
Yeah.
to be able to have something that gets you just in and out of the city. You don't have to look great in it. You want to have another car for the weekend, that's fine. But most people nowadays, as you know, with inflation and the way things are going, we just need it really economic and smart. And so that LFP battery just really answers all of that.
Yeah, I'm not sure about in your neck of the woods, but there seems to be less and less gas stations around. So it's even becoming less and less convenient to have a gasoline sort of powered car. Especially when I'm not in Vancouver anymore, but Vancouver, I think there's one or two gas stations in the sort of city area. So when you talk about urban, definitely looks like most urban cities are sort of moving to the full electrification of sort of transportation in and around these areas. So that's interesting. Now, in terms, as I've known you for a few years, you're quite an intellect. You are able to see things and investment themes sort of play out years in advance. So maybe you could talk a little bit about this phosphoric acid, why you decided to sort of focus on that and how critical that is for batteries. Is that because that stuff's in sort of short supply, or the current suppliers are there's geopolitical sort of issues? What was the reason for really focusing on this phosphoric acid?
Yeah, so I mean, when you go into an industry, right, you need to understand it. Um, I think all too often in mining, we get stuck on the commodity, and we don't understand like the commodity really means nothing unless it's part of a downstream supply chain, right? So we very quickly took
Mm-hmm.
that whole attitude of, hey, phosphate, okay, but then what do you do with it? Like you take a bag of fertilizer and you put it in a gas tank, and suddenly the car runs. Like no, it doesn't, right? So it needs to be purified. It has certain prerogatives, certain ways to be done. So you study that industry, you study the whole value chain, right? What's really interesting around the whole critical mineral sector is that for the first time, really, in kind of industrial history of the last 50 years, we're building a whole new supply chain. We got to build it quick. There's a massive opportunity there, but nobody can do it on their own. You need to be in partnership. You have numerous players at the table with you. So in order to do that, you have to understand the value chain, and what it is exactly. When we looked at phosphate, we saw it as a very small kind of industry controlled by fertilizer interests. And some people said, well, it's an oligopoly, don't get involved, nobody will ever let you in. Some of that is certainly true, but we also saw it as a wonderful opportunity. We said, well, these guys can't move quick enough, or they're great companies, that are in fertilizer, but they're busy with fertilizer. Phosphoric acid is only 5 to 10% of their business base, and it's like a rounding error, right? For somebody making fertilizer, it's only there to sort of handle almost a byproduct or just a small market, right? So they're never going to want to get focused on this, right? Like these companies are big behemoths and they're focused on things that make them money, right? And they're all going in one direction, so they won't be able to meet the needs of the battery industry, especially knowing technology as I have. I've been in technology for almost all my life now. I know that there's really specific needs in the technology industry. It's a pretty tense industry. You got to move pretty damn fast. And I didn't see that the current participants in the phosphate space would be able to answer that, not through any fault of their own. They're great companies, but they're just companies with a specific business model. So phosphoric acid, we also identified that as a shortage. Phosphoric acid is going to be like a sort of like, a lithium, like a gold. It's going to be very difficult to get to it. And also the capacity out there is just not going to meet the demand. So it's a great opportunity to get there. And then when we looked at our phosphate rock, like which phosphate rock can make the most purified phosphoric acid, bingo, igneous rock in Quebec. It's by far the purest 1% of the rock out there in the world. We've got it in Quebec. We've got it close to the port. We've got it in good quantities. We got it near infrastructure, host communities with a lot of um, of infrastructure around them, like in the aluminum battery valley where all the aluminum is being made and shipped down to Detroit, like the logistical patterns, everything's exactly the same. It's all there. So we said, oh, wow, this has got a serious moat around it. So that's when I decided to get involved. And I said, it needs good investment. It needs good managers. And what an opportunity for me to dedicate the rest of my life, as far as I know it, to doing something that's great. That's going to be a real challenge, and that's got a real barrier to entry up around it. I was getting a little tired of, there's one cannabis stock, and then there's 5,000 cannabis stocks. There's one psychedelic stock, and there's 5,000. I looked at this and I said,
Right.
this is always going to be small. It's going to be, you can really distinguish yourself, and it's going to be around certain parameters that not too many people can meet. And it's going to take a lot of understanding of technology and a lot of good people around us who say, wow, this is a perfect business to get into. And yeah, you're right. Phosphoric, phosphate, pure phosphate to get the phosphoric acid to get to, making LFP CAM for batteries. When we started, I mean, here, nobody even really talked about LFP. We saw LFP battery as basically being a tsunami that had just started in China to leave the shores of China, was going to just come and sweep North America within about 1.5 years. And look at where we're at. It's been about almost 2 years now, and everybody's noticing that, LFP battery is going to be huge. Still hasn't completely switched over psychologically, but it's there. It's coming.
Yeah, and maybe just something that's happened that, again, maybe plays into your thought process and how you've sort of like envisioned this sector going. I see that apatite, also known as phosphate, uh, Quebec actually recently added it to its critical and strategic minerals list for the province of Quebec. So that's a good sort of validator for your foresight. Can you sort of comment on that and what that's sort of going to do for your company and other companies that might be in the space?
Yeah, so I mean, it was certainly a lot of foresight, but it was also a lot of education, right? We had to educate a lot of, the industry in Quebec, also in Canada, North America, and the world, on just what is the potential of, igneous phosphate rock, to find a home and to really be a spearhead for this energy transition in North America. So I'm quite proud of, the work that we did, other companies as well, in, getting the Quebec government to understand, wow, we got something really important here. I always laugh. I said, we got something just as important as Celine Dion, Guy Lafleur, or poutine, for those who love French fries.
Hey, there
So,
you go.
you know,
Those are three great famous things.
I
Maybe you
know,
can be
or,
the fourth. So awesome.
right? So we're putting, maybe not as
Yeah,
high as Celine Dion, but we're getting there. Phosphate is up there. Maybe not even as high as Poutine. I don't think I'd want to touch that one. Guy Lafleur for our generation, but let's put it very
yeah,
close. Okay, we're sitting very close with phosphate,
yeah.
and so they recognized it, which is great. Very forward-looking economy there in Quebec. Finance minister and the government right now that's really all about making Quebec the spearhead of electrification in North America. Just wonderful foresight. I mean, obviously, everything can be better, everything can be different, but they're doing their best and they're doing a great job. And so, getting apatite on the critical minerals list was one of the 6 new minerals that they put on the list. There was 22 already on there, I believe, and I think now we're at 28. And if you look at their 6 additions, they were all sort of battery metals, high technology kind of additions. Shows you that Quebec really wants to get into, high technology battery industry. And so, wow, they're looking at LFP battery. They get it. And you asked, how does this help a
Hey,
company like
excellent.
us?
Well,
Well,
Yeah,
you asked how
yeah,
it helps us,
excellent. Well,
right?
congrats on that.
So it helps us because obviously now there's more understanding and there's more openness towards programs to help the development of the industry, and we're one of the few players out there. We're very advanced, so puts us in a good spot.
Great. One of the things that I've always found pretty interesting about you guys is, well, like when you tackle something, you don't sort of dip your toe in, you're sort of all in. But you guys have been able to enter into sort of multiple MOUs and joint development agreements and things like that. Could you sort of just touch on, again, maybe some of the partners and some of the agreements you've kind of entered into that you've announced?
Yeah. So as we were talking about earlier, right, we're looking to fulfill this whole supply chain, because if we're just pulling phosphate out of the ground, I mean, it's meaningless unless that phosphate can travel down a supply chain and eventually end up in something that someone's driving, that's a battery, and that solves a problem that contributes towards electrification, right? Decarbonization, if you will. So all of those MOU partners that we've signed, and one JDA as well, is all towards building that supply chain where the phosphate can travel along at different levels, be transformed into phosphate concentrate, phosphoric acid, LFP CAM, battery cells, obviously we're not going to do it all ourselves, but we're mounting that supply chain, and that's something that governments just love. Whenever governments take a look at First Phosphate, they're like, "Wow, this is exactly what we want out of all the critical minerals." Like, give us a give us a direction, give us a timeline, show us how you're going to stand up this supply chain. So we've got partners in the making of purified phosphoric acid. We've got partners in the making of LFP. We've got offtake suppliers who will actually need the LFP cam to make battery cells. We've got partners on the industrial side, numerous, addressing almost every sector of the production cycle, on the way to making an LFP battery cell.
Now let's sort of turn our attention to like the financial side of things. Maybe you could kind of touch on, over the last year, sort of how much capital you've kind of raised, and maybe you can touch on sort of the insider sort of participation and what your cap table kind of looks like.
Yeah, that's a great one, Kier. So, obviously, financial markets right now are struggling. So, over the last 2 years, we've raised $17.5 million. That's been on our own. Just the work at First Phosphate, our staff. There's been a few brokers that have participated, but no major institutional desks, no major brokers. As you know, all that's been shut down. The retail public, the institutional public's been too badly hurt over this last little meltdown that's happened in the market. So we were out there all on our own. We've been working with family offices, institutions, personal investors. We raised it all on our own, 17.5 million. Our latest raise, just completed around Christmas in January of this year, was $8.2 million. Our coffers are now sitting close to about $10 million. And we're really cashed up. We're cashed up for the next 18 months, 24 months, depending on how quick or how slow we move. Gives us an amazing drill program, allows us to get out there, and our property, which has the most promise in the sense that it's got lots of phosphate. It's very close to infrastructure. It's very close to the port. It's very close to workforce. Very friendly relationships with the municipality, indigenous groups, and the workforce and the governments. We're able to drill that up fully uncover what's there and get that into 43101 and into PEA this year. 5,000 meters of drilling. We have another property not so far from there that's already in PEA. So that's allowed us to understand the full logistics of the area. It's pretty much been able to get us to a internal pre-feasibility state. So now with this money, this is what we're able to do. We're able to get to the next level of the project and hopefully be able to embark on a feasibility study as soon as possible. But great patient investors that we've had on board in very tough markets that have supported us, and we just love it. We just love the way the market responds to us, our communication strategies, very close to our shareholders, and very thankful for their and very respectful of their interest in the company during these tough times.
What percentage of the company is owned by insiders now? People like yourself.
So I believe on SEDI, again, there's been a little bit of dilution. It's probably about 30%, I believe, is just the board and the management. Then, those close to the board and management, strategic investors, friends and family, can get somewhere up to about, 60, 65%. And then there's about another, 20, 30% that's more public floatish, more of the public float that's out there that changes hands. And so that's pretty much where we're at right now.
And how much have you personally invested, you and your family?
So myself personally, I think it comes close to about $1.5 million. There's a lot of people around me, friends and family, who have invested quite a bit as well. It sort of gets intertwined with, the friends and family and the business connections of other members of management and board.
Sure.
So yeah, there's this. We are we look at ourselves as a family at the management level, a family at the board level, a family at the sort of investor level. Now, it doesn't mean family in terms of
Sure.
it's family. It's run like a family business, but it's we have very strong management, fiscal management, governance
Right.
and independence, but we like to think of it as a family, like we're working all towards a common goal. We like to be very transparent and very communicative with the market, with our shareholders. because we highly value what they've allowed us to do here in these very tough markets. Like who else out there has raised $17.5 million in the last 2 years? The way we have, all mano a mano, just all on our own. There hasn't been too much broker support.
Yeah. No, I would say that's one of the reasons why it's very interesting and why I've remained on my radar and remained a shareholder is that you not too many groups are certainly doing that. Also, you don't see too many CEOs stroking a check for $1.5 million, into their own company. So I would say that those are good things to see, and like to see high insider ownership. Anything over 20 is usually pretty good. You guys look like you're sitting a bit higher than that, another 50% higher than that. So good stuff. Now, when I sort of first met you, you're kind of an active check writer. You're writing decent sized checks into things. And then at some point the light bulb went on, and perhaps you thought, well, heck, let's do something a little different here. I want to sort of take the helm and actually sort of like operate a business. Perhaps you thought you could do it better or whatnot. But how's that sort of transition been from being sort of like an investor, a little bit passive, to being incredibly active and really leading the entire operational side of the business and the financing capital market side of the business? How have you found that?
Yeah, well, I think you hit a really important question there. I mean, you're right. I've been an investor, and sometimes a disappointed investor with some of the investments that I've made, and it's sometimes come down to management decisions, not necessarily asset decisions. So I did try at times to get onto the board, thinking that that'd give me some form of a control. Still can't control the managers from the board always. So I decided on this. I said, this is a really good opportunity here. I really see this as, a multi-year project, something that I can really dip my toes into, something that brings together, all the skills that I've learned in life. And I want to protect it, right? I don't want to see it go by the wayside like a lot of these other companies have with great assets and, management teams that have, struggled. So I said, let me put my money where my mouth is. Let me try to do my best here, and let me come in and build this company, right? Especially for all the investors that were coming in with me, they all liked that. They wanted to see me sort of execute on it. They felt safe. I certainly feel safe with myself. Others feel safe with me too. Not everybody, right? You're not always going to get along with everybody, and you're not always going to have the same
Sure.
vision, right? And it changes, and it is what it is, right? But generally, we have like a very high consensus rate. And that's what I mean. We are a family, and here we sort of bounded, blessed by one vision, and we're patient. We're looking at this very long term. So yeah, it's been very different for me. I thought I wouldn't like it. I thought it'd be too much responsibility and too much exposure. And certainly is all those things. And it's not always easy. Sometimes, you do one little wrong thing, everybody jumps on it. You do 10 right things and they're misinterpreted as wrong. It's really not easy being in the public eye. I've learned a lot, and I've calmed down a lot too in some of my investments that sometimes are not going well, which I still have. Now when I see managers on the other side, I just say to them, like, I'm here to help you. Okay, you're struggling. I'm not happy. You're not happy, but let's work together and let's try to figure it out, because I know the pressure on this side right now, and it's like
Sure.
sometimes it's just you catch more flies with honey. So I ask my shareholders to be constructive with me, and it's helped me to be a lot more constructive in some of my investments, even if I'm not happy, completely unhappy. I just approach it all with help and courtesy and kindness. Forget the lawyers, forget all this nonsense. None of that's going to solve anything. The only thing that's going to solve it is people sitting down, and sometimes you got to just accept it. Like investment's a goose egg. So I've learned from that. I've learned the pressures on CEOs and the support that they need, but I also love the job. I really didn't think I'd love the job. I thought it would be a tremendous responsibility, but I love it. I love the sense of empowerment. I love the sense of having an idea and actually being able to execute upon it. Sometimes I still get frustrated, even as CEO. Sometimes you can't fully implement what you want, right? And as the organizations grow and
Right.
things around you, you don't have nobody's really got 100% control over anything. You realize people expect you to, people assume you do, people assume you have 150% control over things, and you might come back and say, well, I got 40 on that, I got 50, I got 60, I got 70, but I don't have 100. And so I could try to help you, but I can't for sure help you. And people, you'll also find when you're a CEO, everybody pulls at you from different directions. And I tell everybody, and I had to say this to an investor just recently, when you're a CEO, you have to have the vision of a dragonfly. So what the hell is that? Well, dragonflies they have eyes on the side of their heads. They can kind of see like a drone, right? They'll be able to see all the way around you, got to see on top of you and underneath you. So you have to have, and then that's not enough. You have to have a sixth sense and a seventh sense, and sometimes you just got to smell it, and you have to have hair all over your body, pick up all kinds of things coming into you. So you're dealing with 10,000 data points, right? And most people are coming at you with,
Right.
hey, I've got 10 data points and you're just not adding up for me, or hey, I want this done, I want that done. You're like, but in this corner here, you didn't see this or you didn't see that. And if we don't do that, that's going to kill us, right? So you're expected to do that, and you have to do that, but you have to do that with kindness and courtesy, and you have to be able to explain to people, not just, hey, I know, don't worry about it, leave me alone. I'm not telling you. People still want to understand, so you have to understand, explain it all in very basic language, and show people that you are listening to them, you're taking care of it. Sometimes you don't have the time to do it, so it's a lot of pressure. People have money in the market. The thing you'll find is, the markets right now are terrible, right? Terrible. People cannot put the small cap markets, at least, right? Because of the interest rates. People can't put food on the table. They can't get
Yeah.
their kids to school. And sometimes they need to sell your stock just because they need money. And that's more the case so than not. And a lot of people investing in the market right now are just not, shouldn't be investing in these stocks right now because it's too risky. It's too dangerous. And they're just in and they've got to get out quickly as soon as they have losses. And so, it doesn't matter what you do sometimes as a CEO or as a company, all the stocks are in the pits right now. There's nothing you can do. Like, we're very happy with our stock, actually. We're trading above our first two raises pre-public. Most companies, as you know, are down
Right.
90% from those raises. We're very close to the price of our last raise. We even raised money a little bit high, quite a bit higher on one of the raises. And people, are having to come to terms with that we're down 50% on that investment, whereas on other ones we're just up 5-10%, down 10%. So we are doing very well, I think, given the macro conditions out there. But share prices are not an easy thing to maintain, and they're not one that you should really
Sure.
be striving for right now, because it's not there. What you need to be striving for right now as a CEO and as a company is execution. Execution in the end is what will pay off, but also prudent management of capital, and being able to get through these tough times, right? Like, thank God we got our raise in when we did in December. Lithium market fell apart in January, just a few weeks ago, and now it's battery trade off. Anybody associated with the battery sector, boom, all being sold off, and no one's got money in the coffers. There's going to be a lot of carnage here over the next 6 to 12 months. Not First Phosphate. We've got plenty of cash, but we also have to deploy that cash. Some of it's flow through. It's got to be spent in the ground. I mean, so it really comes down to management, this game. And I'm happy to be here. I could fail, but I'm not going to fail not trying, right, and not respecting my shareholders.
Sure. Hey, well, thank you. That's a lot of insight, and yeah, I'm surprised sometimes, how available people have to be as well when they're CEOs and management. There's people that are looking to talk to them of all hours at any time of the day. So there's a lot sort of coming at you, but I appreciate your vantage point and your viewpoint onto that. That's great. So talking about the macro, you kind of just touched on it a little bit. The battery trade is kind of off. Anything sort of to do with like lithium and EV has gotten a bit soft, and there's a bit of a hate trade sort of going on. I would imagine you guys are going to kind of get caught up a little bit in that as soon as phosphoric acid and what you're looking to do with your projects kind of ties into that sort of downstream of EVs and sort of lithium batteries. So, what are your sort of thoughts in terms of the sector? It seems that in terms of like North America and Canada, for that matter, there's quite a lot of progress to sort of build out or onshore these types of battery and automobile and sort of manufacturing to sort of continue to grow out the sort of EV space as well as the overall electrification of the economy. What are your sort of thoughts in terms of the macro and also in terms of what's actually happening on the demand side for these types of products?
I mean, look, the macro doesn't change. The demand fundamentals, if anything, it's getting stronger. Um, like I said, that tsunami, that tidal wave that was coming over from Asia, has now hit our shores. Everybody knows that you need it. It's got to get done. The available capital in the markets right now is low. The valuations are low. Um, this whole lithium trade-off has also meant, like you said, battery trade-off. So everyone's valuation's been hurt a little bit by that. We have certainly in the last few weeks been hurt by that. But this doesn't go away. So what it comes down to now is your fundamentally strong management teams, your fundamentally strong companies, where people say, "Hey, I've been in here for the long run." Sure, we watch the share price. Everybody watches the share prices, but you know, you have to have a management team that's ready to tough it out, that's ready to be there for their investors, um, and that's going to build a business over the long term. Um, and people sometimes just give up. Like when the going gets tough, the tough keep going, right? So that's where you're going to shine. And that's what I got to do as a CEO. That's what we have to do as a company. And I have people, sort of judging us based on everybody else's share price. And, just because share prices are lower doesn't mean electrification is over. If anything, it's getting started. And this is actually good for us. You know why? Because just say 60-70% of the companies disappear over the next 6 to 12 months. What do you think is going to happen? It always happens in these resource sectors, right? During the recession,
Right.
everybody just disappears, goes bankrupt. Then boom, all of a sudden demand starts up again. And everyone's like, oh, where am I going to get the minerals? Where am I going to get the materials? So everybody who's been able
Right.
to survive then goes, okay, so a
Yeah.
little bit of short-term
We
pain
also
to.
have it, unfortunately. Yeah. We also sort of have it in our sector, unfortunately, when like a sector, when a mineral gets tough, they tend to sort of move on to something else. They're like the ambulance chasers, right? So we've had some gold companies become lithium companies, and some lithium companies now become uranium companies. When that stuff starts happening, it's usually time for that sector to sort of cool off again. But it sounds like, in terms of what you've done, you've created yourself a great moat with where you've sort of focused, and there's not a ton of players. Now, in terms of the projects, one of them's got a PEA, I guess, on it. One of the things that's sort of been very interesting and discussion point always when you're talking about, potentially developing a project is sort of like CAPEX. Do you have any ideas or any ability, under 43-101 to even start to talk about what CAPEXs might sort of like look like? Are these sort of like moderate or affordable sort of CAPEXs, or are we looking at, $1 billion plus type CAPEX for these types of projects?
So look, I mean, there's three projects in our stable. There's a mining concentrate pilot plant. There's a purified phosphoric acid plant, and then there's an LFP CAM plant. Certainly, those all add up to a lot of CAPEX. But the idea is, you start with the mining concentration pilot plant at Lacalorinhal. The PEA did reveal a cost of about 400 million US, which is really reasonable. Um, and then, on
Right.
that basis, you now have the feedstock for purified phosphoric acid plant. We have a partner at the table for that. We have also EXIM Bank, Export-Import Bank of the United States, that's willing to finance that. Quebec government has also, looked at it favorably. So, and then the next step after that is to make LFP batteries. So if you can get those first two done, then you've got opportunities for some of the bigger um, players in the battery space to make LFP batteries with, and they're all going to have to do it. You saw the deal with Nouveau Monde just yesterday. Nouveau Monde Graphite, GM came in. I think it's
Yes.
Panasonic was on the other side. Yeah. So it has to happen, and it has to happen in North America. People still haven't caught on to this because of the Inflation Reduction Act and a very important update that there was in December. All of this is going to have to be made in North America, and there just isn't that amount of mines, especially the phosphate.
Right.
So this is it's just a matter of patience
I
and a
would,
matter of
so just
getting it done.
sorry, just on that point, in terms of having to do it in North America, some of the credits and things are tied to where your critical materials are used in the production of these products. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Now with the update to the Inflation Reduction Act, and I mean we called it. Inflation Reduction Act came out a few years ago, and obviously it was imperfect in what the people do, rather than looking at the spirit of the law and say, hey, let's get our axe in gear here and let's make things in North America. Said, let me stick a few lawyers on this. Let me see how I can get around it. So everybody tried getting around it, doing things, partnering up with Chinese firms in different areas. I mean, we were invited down to some, very closed room door sessions because of our expertise. And we were asked, like, how do you fix this? And people were asked, what do you do? And I believe that the U.S. government listened to that. And they said, we want you guys to follow the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law. So they came out and just put in new guidelines. It doesn't matter if it's not made in North America, it goes into an electric vehicle, you're not getting the credits. So companies like Tesla that were going around it are now not getting their credits. So now they have to make the LFP batteries in North America or other parts of it. So I think that was very welcoming for the fact that, look, I think the world has to cooperate together. I don't like the witch hunt going on with China. I think, we have to fix our relationships with China and the rest of the world. But I also do believe that, every economy has to have a form of industrial backbone, a form of economic independence. And, you trade with others based on strength, not based on weakness. So to a certain degree, we do have to get these supply chains built in North America. Again, I don't like the ethnocentric rhetoric that comes with some of this stuff. So, but, I think it's important that we get our supply chains in order in North America. And I think, the Industrial Revolution started in Europe. It started in North America. Like, I don't know why we think we're so useless that we can't do anything anymore. Like, all that technology that's now in China, they didn't just make it overnight. It all came from the West. It was all perfected over there. And kudos to them. They've done a great job. But, we have a lot of fight left in us in the Western world. We have a lot of ability to mount these supply chains. And everyone's always crying about CAPEX, crying about this, crying about that. Do you know what this continent was 500 years ago? There wasn't cities. That was all built. That was all built through people working hard together. Let's get away from the colonial aspects. I know that's a touchy subject nowadays, but working together, the world has been built, and there's no reason that we can't continue to build. Like, we're not all just useless and just sitting there waiting to take a welfare check from somewhere or a minimum income subsidy.
Yeah,
but we got to get to work. When people get up in the morning, you get up in the morning, you work. You feel good. You don't need to go to the gym because that was the gym. And you feel good. You feel like you've accomplished something, right? And you can't take that away from people, right? And the new sectors of the economy, if that's electrification, then great. Let's do it. Let's be positive. Let's be fulfilling. Let's not be cynical and self-defeatist all the time. That's my message.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's a good message. I think a lot of it obviously came down to sheer sort of like costs and economics. There was cheaper labor over in Asia, so it was a good deal to sort of offshore a lot of these things. But I think we've seen what happens when you are completely reliant upon other trade partners, like you said, partnering due to weakness rather than a position of strength. And I guess we're starting to see what can happen to industries with the advent of automation and artificial intelligence. So I guess we'll see. That seems to be an interesting game space where there's something new and game changing or shattering almost weekly. But yes, we certainly are of the electrification age. Is upon us, and looks like you've got a very interesting place within that for these LFP batteries to be used not only in vehicles, but also used for like base load or storage, where you've got batteries which are not going to be, in a vehicle moving somewhere, but, will be used to like store power in a static sort of location. So anyways, very interesting. Maybe you could kind of talk, we'll just sort of wrap up here. Thank you. I appreciate your time. What sort of catalysts do you sort of see coming down the pipe over the next 6 months?
Yeah, so the big one is obviously this 25,000 meter drill program that's just gotten underway. We've got 2 companies out there. We've got 3 rigs. Should be completed by May of this year. move that into 43101. We know the phosphate's on surface. We know it's there. We've already done 4,200 meters. It's just defining it. And then moving that into PEA, starting on environmental studies, we hope, and then moving this into a feasibility study as soon as possible. Also, now that we've made purified phosphoric acid with Prayon, our next step is to, work together with some of our other partners downstream and make that into LFP cathode active material and battery cells. And we continue to expand our partnerships. We're looking down the road to eventually getting our purified phosphoric acid facilities started as well.
Hey, excellent. Well, that sounds like a lot of work to sort of accomplish. And if anybody can do it, I definitely put my money on you. So, hey, let's not make it a year next time we sort of catch up. Why don't we catch up here after you completed some of your drilling and get a bit of an update for everybody? But I really appreciate your time and answering these questions in depth. And congrats on all the success you've had over the last 12 months. And again, you've had quite a lot of news flow. If it's not a news release every week, it's every other week, and you've been very busy. And again, congrats on all the capital that's been raised as well.
Thank you, Kira. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thanks for your support.